In today's video, we're going to be installing a cell phone booster onto the Airstream. Let's get to it. There are a number of ways that people get internet while traveling and on the road. Our primary source of internet when we're on the road is cellular signal. And we've been using the T-Mobile home unit, and that's been working really well for us. But we're looking at the future and trying to integrate new and different technologies. And another thing that's going on with us is we're going to start doing a little more boondocking. We're going to be in a little more remote areas than we've been. And that's where something like this, a cellular signal booster, can really come into play. This is the HiBoost cellular signal booster. While HiBoost did provide us this product, this review and installation is going to be totally our own. They have no input or say as to the type of review or how effective or ineffective this unit may be. Before we get to the installation and some of our unique issues in installing this in the Airstream, let's take a look at what's inside this box. I do want to point out that this is their new Travel 3.0 RV phone booster, and this is the newest unit that they have on the market. It is 5G compatible and looks to be very high quality. But again, let's open it up and let's see what's in this box. Foam right here. Here's a user manual. Those are always quite important. I did look at this earlier, and there's actually a little bit of humor in this. It's kind of fun to see something like that. Also in here is the actual booster module itself, and this has quite a bit of weight to it. And I noticed that it has these rubber pads on the side. It says you're getting signal and what's going on. Here is where the outdoor antenna plugs in, and here's where the indoor antenna hooks in, and then here's the DC input for power. Here is the component for the antenna, for the whip antenna that goes up. It has a little slot for the coax cable to come out. There's two of these in the box, and these are extenders to get that antenna as high as possible. And depending on the mount and the type of mounting that your RV needs, you may need one, both, or none of these for the installation to work properly. So again, there's two of these. Let's go down a layer in the box. Here is the external antenna, which is a omnidirectional antenna. So you don't have to point it at a signal. It's going to be receiving signals from all around. That should be pretty handy. Here's a length of the micro coax cable for the antenna. This would be what is going to hook up the external antenna and then run inside our Airstream or your RV and then hook to the booster component right here. There is some mounting hardware with a ladder bracket, some U-bolts and a ladder bracket. If you have an external ladder on your RV, I know a number of fifth wheels do, and some travel trailers. We do not have that on our trailer, so we are not going to be using these components. This is the AC adapter that converts the power, so then if you plug into AC power, this would then plug into the HiBoost to power it to make it work. And this is a 12 volt, 3 amp output from this. So this unit is designed to run on 12 volts. They also have for power the former 12 volt type power or cigarette lighter for those who are of a certain age that can plug in. And then there's an on-off switch here to turn it on and off, and then a USB port here in case you have to share this with some other things. So if you have a cigarette lighter plug, this would work out really well. This is the internal antenna here that will mount inside the rig. And again, so this coax connector, this mini coax connector, will connect to the one that says indoor right here. And then this will be mounted somewhere inside the rig. This is also a magnetic. If you have a place that's magnetic, and this could stick, so that could work for you. Of course, the Airstream is all aluminum, not really magnetic, so we won't be using the magnet portion of this. Here is a bracket. This appears to be stainless steel that is going to mount the antenna for it to go up. We're going to be using this, and we're going to be mounting this in a pretty unique spot on the Airstream. We'll get into a little bit of that later. Here is the actual spring antenna mount that'll work. And again, this is very nice, very well crafted. I was actually really surprised by the quality of all of these components when I was doing my initial inspection of this. But the whip antenna is going to screw into this side, and then this end here will screw into this bracket, and that'll get the antenna up in the air for us. Also included in this kit are all kinds of adhesives. There's a couple of these oval adhesives will stick to the back of this, and then this would permanently stick the internal antenna somewhere, wherever it's best. There's this gummy sealant adhesive stuff. Not sure what this would be used for, but we'll find out. There's a number of zip ties here to hold the cables down and keep them neat. That's really nice. And then there's a couple of hook and loop or Velcro type fasteners here that's sticky on the one side and hook and loop on the other. That may be how we end up mounting this. In fact, there's even laser engraved right here on the back where these things would mount to help you get that squared away. And then you could mount it this way, and that way you could still remove this if this ever needed some work or if there was ever an issue. And I just want, this is heavy. This weighs quite a bit. This is a couple pounds. I'm really surprised. There's something pretty serious going on inside here. And the cooling fins are right there. So this must generate a little bit of heat as well. So we have to consider that where we think about mounting this. Well, that's everything that's in the box. And after this, we're going to look at where we're going to mount this and see if the mounting hardware that's included with this HiBoost is going to be sufficient to mount this on the Airstream. Coming up with a place to mount this HiBoost external antenna on our Airstream has been quite a bit of a challenge. And one of the things about these cell phone boosters that you need to know is that the external antenna and the internal antenna have to be as far apart from each other as possible. That's because they're both transmitting and receiving the same frequency of signal. And if the antennas are too close together, it's kind of like ripples in a pond. If you do them just the right way, they'll kind of cancel each other out. And we don't want that. We want to boost the signal, not cancel the signal. That would be really bad for our situation. But one of the first things that I considered when coming up with a place to mount this antenna is, where is the wire going to come into the Airstream? And I really didn't want to drill any holes through the roof of the Airstream. I want a permanent type installation that's going to be very professional and look very nice, but I didn't want to create any potential for water infiltration into the Airstream. So one thing that is available, or a place that's available to run wires and create a wire chase, is actually the vent right up here for the refrigerator. And we'll be able to run a wire into that vent and drop it down into the chase, and it'll come out right here on our back refrigerator access panel, and we should be able to mount that booster in there somewhere. I do have 12-volt power right here that we could probably tap into. I think there'll be a good opportunity for us to mount that there, so the wire can run down this chase without drilling any holes, come in right here, and then somewhere we'll have to put the internal antenna probably up towards the front of the Airstream. Most people mount these on a ladder mount, as I had mentioned, but of course in the Airstream, all of our surfaces are very pretty and curved, but there's no real place to mount this thing there because of that. But one thing that I thought about would be to mount it somehow to one of the air conditioner units. It is a plastic housing, but that black part underneath is metal. There's a screw that's holding that cowl right on, that plastic cowl on the top. And I think we can use that to mount the bracket that'll then mount that external antenna. Let's get out the ladder and let's see if that'll work to mount that antenna. Well, here's the bracket, and I brought a screwdriver up as well. And what we're gonna do is we're going to take off that screw that's holding the back corner of this cowling and see if this bracket will mount on there intelligently, and then what else we're gonna need, because I don't think those U-bolts or anything are gonna work with this. So let's take a look. Okay, now if we use this screw right here, and that's just a nice, looks like a number 10, it's either 8 or 10 sheet metal screw, and that goes in there. Let's put it back in. I'm pretty sure that this bracket will work. We're not touching the roof, no holes or anything there. And so let's see, we've got couple other holes. We've got this other oval hole right here and some other holes right here. So my thought is we could drill another hole here and put in a sheet metal screw right here, and that'll keep that bracket from turning. But it's still got a bit of play, and with that antenna sticking up from here, it may be a little bit of wind. So I'm thinking there's these other holes here, possibly this one here. We could do a 1/4 inch bolt and then go through and drill a hole right through this metal, and then bring a bolt in and put a nut right there to hold it steady, and then come through and a nut on either side of this to pinch that. And that should make that very, very solid and stable as we go down the road. But before we do that, I think we need to run to the hardware store and get the supplies we need to make this work. Okay, we're back from the hardware store and we've got some supplies. So we have some number 10 3/4 inch long screws that we're going to use. I just need probably one of these to mount this bracket up at the top. Those are stainless steel. And then I got some hex bolts. We're going to use one or maybe two of those along in here where the bottom of the bracket is. Also have some washers and some larger washers. We're definitely going to need the larger washers for the bolt on the bottom, and we may need these along the top. But our first thing that we're going to do is we're going to mark where that hole is going to go and get that set so we can mount that screw right in there. So we will draw around this, and let's get the drill out and the drill bits as well. So we're gonna do an 1/8 inch drill bit, and we're gonna drill through this right here. And again, it's just the housing is right there, so there's nothing critical behind that. Make sure we're level with this. Chuck our drill bit in. And we're going to drill through the plastic and then the sheet metal. Right there. So let's see one of these screws tightens up into that. Oh yeah, that's pretty serious way it wants to go. So being that I'm up on a ladder, grab a bit driver, drive that in. We're gonna see how sturdy that is. That's pretty darn sturdy, but again, I think we need something on the bottom of this to keep that from flexing, and that's what these other bolts are for. My thought is, we'll get this in here straight. We'll have to make sure that this bolt is going straight and hitting that housing. Then I'll drill a hole that this can go through, and then we're gonna mount this in reverse. I'm gonna stick the bolt head with a washer behind it inside the unit and come out and tighten it up with bolts out here. But I need to make sure this is straight. So one of my ideas is I'm gonna grab one of these nuts out of here and see if this works. Do that nice and flat right there. A couple ideas on how to mark that, but I'm gonna try with the pencil first and see if I can kind of get a rough idea around this. That's just enough that I'll be able to tell where to drill that. So let's get these two screws out of there. So let's see if we can start this and get our hole right there. I think we might need to drill a pilot hole first, make us a little easier on ourselves. So let's try that. Probably help if I had a higher speed drill. See if the bolt slips through there, and it does. So then the idea is to grab one of these washers. Now we're gonna see if I can carefully reach in there and thread this through. I guess it's gonna be a little more difficult than I thought. That's the theory, and then have a bolt inside, tighten this up, and then one and a washer out here, and that'll keep this from wiggling too much. But I'm gonna go grab some Loctite right now, and I'm gonna put it on some of these threads as we're going to make sure this thing doesn't loosen up as we travel down the road. Let's bring this one out a little bit. Drop right there. And this is the blue Loctite in case we ever need to remove it. This is a removable one. Let's just get a drop. Whoops, right there. Let's put a gallon right there. Put this screw back in. So I've got the Loctite here, I've got it here, and I'm gonna add some to this thread where this nut's gonna go. now we've got this one back here. Let's see if I can just put a drop of, whoops, Loctite on that, I couldn't see it. Starts to snug up on that. So see, I've got a nut back there. Now we're gonna grab another flat washer right there. Then another one of these 1/4 20 nuts. So now we're gonna do is we're gonna go grab the antenna assembly, put it together and mount it so that we're ready to run the wire and wire it up on the inside. I had test fit some of this earlier, and I know that I'm gonna need one of these extensions along with the external antenna, and then of course the thing that has where the wire can escape out the side. The antenna itself has a male thread end, so I know how to bring the female thread up. Push this through like this. Bring this up into here. See, I'm threading that in. It's probably hard to see because it's all black, but let's put our Loctite on now. Thread into the antenna. A little bit of a pressure on there, just a little bit. When this one is set up, as you can see, again, it's got to go this way because this again has the male threads. You can use 0, 1, or 2 of these extensions, and this cord is just long enough to work with all of that. But we just need the one, otherwise it goes up too high in the air and makes our Airstream too tall. But again, we're going to use this way. This is going to thread through and will come right out that side. Again, we're going to add some Loctite. Last thing we want is to be crossing the Mackinac Bridge or something and have this thing blow off. And there's little flats on these so that you can get a wrench on them and tighten them up. This takes a little bit. There's our antenna assembly right there. Now we need to mount the spring to this. That will just screw right onto here. And again, we're going to use some Loctite on those threads. Do a little bit of tighten up on this. Right there. That should lock that all together. Now we're going to go mount this whole assembly to our bracket. Let's get going. So here's our antenna all mounted up. The spring mount to prevent any damage. I've got my wrenches, I've got my Loctite. Let's see if we can get this mounted onto there. So we'll take the nut off. Yeah, so I talked about the quality, attention to detail. Look at how well that's machined and manufactured. A little shoulder right in there. So when it drops in, it just locks right into the bracket. I'm gonna put a little bit of Loctite on this. I'm going to drop this through and then mount my nut onto the bottom, use the 2 wrenches to tighten everything up. And that's our booster antenna mounted now to the Airstream. And see, it's got the spring. So if we go through something low, this will actually bend and then be able to come back. Everything is good and solid. All the nuts are Loctited, the screws are Loctited right together. I would say this is a pretty darn solid assembly right here. So our next order of business, and that'll be on a different day, we're going to route this wire, put the extension on and over, and then drop it down inside the Airstream to go to the booster module and ultimately to the inside antenna. So it's been a couple of days since we put the antenna up on the Airstream, and today we're going to start routing the external antenna wire inside the Airstream. I've determined in our situation the best and easiest way to run this wire chase is going to be to use the vent for the refrigerator. So I'm going to drill a small hole right here that will allow for the antenna wire to drop down through this cavity, basically a chimney chase, and then it'll go down into a compartment. From there, I can feed it through and get it to the inside of the Airstream, and from there, we can put it where the boosting box is going to end up. Now that we have our hole drilled in there, we're going to run this weighted line down. I put 3 sinkers on there. That should help that drop down in that cavity. My string method never did actually work, so I went and got a little mini fish tape right here. I ran to the hardware store and picked that up and was able to fish that through the hole and down, and it's actually popped out below. So now we're going to tape the cable to it and we're going to pull that up. After I fed that wire up and through this hole, through that chase, I slipped a grommet on here that's going to provide a water seal right there. It's big enough for the cable to go through, and it drills a 3/8 hole, which is what we drilled right there, for this to snap right in. You can see this has like a little shoulder in there. It goes in and then snaps right around that hole. Then it'll still allow me to push in or pull out just a little bit of slack as I need to get this antenna wire the exact length necessary. Now let's get that grommet secured in that opening, and for that we're going to use our handy dandy equalizer tool that we also use to open up stuck windows on the Airstream. Works really great, and I know it won't damage this rubber grommet. Very safe to use on the glass. It's going to be very safe to use here as well. So let's get this pushed in. It's the next day, and now that we've installed the antenna, ran the cable down through the chase of the refrigerator vent, so now that cable's coiled up and waiting for us in the box in the back of the refrigerator cabinet. We've got to route the cable inside, and then we're going to install the actual amplifier for the HiBoost, then run the inside antenna from that and place it somewhere here in the Airstream. So let's get going. The plan is to install the HiBoost actual amplifier behind this compartment right here below the range. Since it's right next to the refrigerator, we should be able to run the antenna wire through one of the pre-drilled holes in the bottom of that unit and then feed it into the booster. Because we're also right next to the electrical box, we should be able to tie into the 12-volt system to power the HiBoost. Then we're going to run the inside antenna cable along the back and behind these cabinets to come out near our L-shaped lounge in the front of the Airstream, and then mount the antenna somewhere there. The initial plan is for the HiBoost inside antenna to be in this area right here, and it's kind of out of the way. It'll still provide, I believe, enough transmission power inside the Airstream, and is very far away from the external antenna. That installation should meet the specs listed in the HiBoost literature, in that you want the outside antenna up and as far away as possible from the inside antenna. Now, we're also going to be helped in that an Airstream is a pretty effective Faraday cage, so it's very difficult for cell signals to make it through inside the Airstream. Again, the external antenna in the back of the Airstream and as high as possible, and the internal antenna in the front of the Airstream and as low as is feasible. So let's get cracking on getting this done. So here's our wire, and we're going to route this cable down through one of the openings that's already here in this refrigerator compartment. Installation is basically done. I've got the HiBoost right here. It's going to be mounted behind this access panel on the floor. I'm going to Velcro it to the floor with a supplied Velcro. I've got my outside and inside antennas hooked up, and I've wired it directly to the 12-volt power supply in the fuse panel. It's on its own dedicated circuit. But I thought I'd take a minute and we'll go through some speed tests, and I'm going to do it first with the booster on so you can see kind of what's going on here. But let's run our speed test really quick and see where we are. And it's picking up speed. And we're going to be at around 24, 25 megabits for upload. I'm sorry, 26.6 for download. And just over 2 for upload. Now let's switch this over. Let's turn on our Wi-Fi, and that'll connect to our T-Mobile Wi-Fi. And let's let it reach out and find our T-Mobile and see where our T-Mobile signal is with this on. And it looks like we're going to be looks like we're going to be just over 50 for our download speed, 51.4 megabits, and then our upload speed not the best, just under 2 megabits, so 1.93. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to unplug the HiBoost, and that'll shut off all the boosting, and then let's look at the speed we have after that. So with the HiBoost unplugged, let's check first again our AT&T signal. And so we've got that all set right now on the speed test, and we're going to go for that. So around 13.8 megabits on my download, and my upload of the AT&T is on 1.27 megabits. So let's get out of that. We're going to turn our Wi-Fi on, and then let it connect to the T-Mobile home internet device that's sitting right here behind me. And so then we're going to test the T-Mobile speed without the cell phone booster. And that is at 44.5 megabits on the download. and our upload speed is less than 1 megabit. It's 0.66. And that tells me that the cell booster is really working, especially when I have to upload some videos to YouTube. This is going to be a real time saver. Real anxious to try this out in a very poor cell service area where we have little to no signal. But the nice thing is we're actually bringing the cell signals inside now, because it's very difficult to do that inside our Airstream in the all metal enclosure. And then finally, the last part of the installation that I'm going to have to do is to get up on a roof of the ladder and secure that cable down so it's not flopping in the wind. And luckily I have those ties left over from the Halo View backup camera that I installed a short time ago on the back of the Airstream. Those secure cable ties will let me affix that antenna cable nice and solid to the top of the Airstream.